Well, welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. I'm Tom Murray, your host, and yet again, do I have a treat for you all. I am ecstatic for this week's guest, the one and only Melody Hawkins, my good friend from Tennessee. Melody, how are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful, Tom. How are you?
It is awesome seeing you. We just finished up our school year. Now, before I ask you to introduce yourself a little bit, to give you a shout, you're a district science facilitator in Tennessee. You're also the 2021 National University Teacher of the Year. We could talk a little bit about that as well. Our connection here at Future Ready with National, what an amazing organization there as well. You also do some consulting and speaking, and so you're all over the place. You get to see a lot. You're in classrooms, but you also get to get outside your district and see things as well. So I am excited to have this conversation today as we dive in. I love your energy, your passion, just you radiate everything in all of our conversations we've ever had, and excited to bring you to our listeners here at Future Ready School. So I gave a really quick overview, but give our listeners, if you would, just a quick trajectory of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. You did a great job with the quick overview. We don't have to go into detail, but if you're asking, I don't mind. So this is my second career. I started my career as an educator after spending a couple of years working in lab science. And here in my state in Tennessee, and that was after I spent years working on my microbiology degree at University of Tennessee. I just knew I was going to be a doctor. And then I just knew I wanted to be a medical technician. And then I just knew I wanted to be a medical pathologist. I was really trying to figure things out in my early 20s. But I had this degree in microbiology, and I wasn't quite ready to jump into the medical world. So I decided to join the AmeriCorps. And so I worked for the American Red Cross through the AmeriCorps in New Orleans. And that was an amazing year. My year there really sparked my passion that I already had, but it just ignited it, I guess I should say, my passion for working with youth, working in the community, really being like boots on the ground and supporting the work that we see is necessary to continue to have a thriving world and a thriving society. So I believe that my time there was very much purposed. I came back from New Orleans to Tennessee, and that's when I decided to go into the lab world. I worked there for several years, started my family while working at the lab. It was great. But I just kept feeling this pull that I was supposed to be doing something else. And that was kind of scary for me because I spent so much time saying and telling anyone who asks, like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a scientist. That's who I am. That's what I want to do. And it didn't dawn on me till after I had my girls that I could go into the science world as a science professional, or I could teach kids and inspire many scientists and many doctors in this world. And so I decided to go back to school to get my master's degree and my certification as a teacher. The very first school that I walked into to apply is the only school I ever taught at, and that is the school here in my city that has always been in the heart of the city, supports a high needs community, and that school is so special to me. So a lot of the awards and the accolades and all the things that I've had the opportunity to win and be a part of, it has come from my just real passion and devotion to supporting my students at the school that I was at. I saw what they needed, and I loved them so dearly, and I wanted them to know that they are great and they can do great things. And so I kept saying yes to any opportunity that would have me at the table so that my students would have access to great curriculum, great opportunities to do things in the real science world. I was always saying yes. And that ended up with me walking into many situations where I got to win awards and go back to school and get a lot of opportunities to continue learning. And I did spend a couple of years as an administrator at our feeder high school for the middle school that I was at. And that was beautiful because I got to kind of continue the journey with some of the students that I started the journey with as their 8th grade science teacher. So that was beautiful. And now I'm in a district role, and I get to support even more students and even more teachers. So I love life as an educator.
That's amazing. And I'm still hung up on what you said about 3.5 minutes ago on your degree in microbiology. And my first thought, and no surprise to our listeners, is yeah, this week's guest is a heck of a lot smarter than this week's host. So let's start there in the conversation, right? And for those of us that listen every week, I'm guessing they're thinking, yeah, most weeks that's the case. So, hey, I am completely in awe of your brilliance and your work. And thank you for sharing this. I love when we hear people's journeys throughout, and whatnot. And it just gives some
Yeah.
perspective on just where you've been and where your passions lie. So with that, and as you move to that director role, I know one of the things you've been really focused on and even doing some doctorate work on is around instructional leadership. And we recently had another podcast on a very similar topic. And let's be real, as school and district leaders that are listening to this is the most important aspect, the one of them for sure, the teaching and learning side. And getting in there side by side with teachers, working with them, navigating some challenging conversations at times, maybe modeling some things as well. So talk to us a little bit, if you would, about supporting teacher motivation and igniting that passion. I could listen to you talk all day long. Your passion radiates, but let's be real. Sometimes we walk into classrooms, and it might not always be the case. And I love my
Yes.
teachers, and that's not a knock on them at all. And so,
Mhm.
talk to us a little about maybe when you're working with staff, working with teachers, coaching them from your director's position. How do you navigate the motivation, the inspiration piece? Obviously, the high quality teaching and learning piece. Just give us a dive into that, if you would, from your perspective.
Yeah, of course. That's something that when I walked into the classroom, my first year in the room, that was my student teaching year. Like year one for me was student teaching. I was learning to be a teacher. I'm fortunate to have grown up with my mom. She's an educator, so I saw her how she poured into her students. That might have been one of the reasons why I said wanted to be a doctor. I just didn't want to be a teacher, and so I was like, no, I can't do that. But when I walked into the classroom, I walked in with um, I guess with I placed teachers on a pedestal, so to speak. Like they were so big. Being a teacher is so big in my eyes because I saw how much work my mom put into being a teacher, working with her students, how much she loved them, how much they loved her, and I didn't always understand it. I'm like, yeah, my mom's a teacher, she's working hard. But when I grew up and moved out of the house and kind of took a step back and I saw it, I was like, wow, my mom is putting a lot of energy into this one kid. And this kid may not say thank you. They might not come back. She may not ever see them again, but she's putting all of her love and energy into making sure that they are successful. So when I walked into the classroom, I absolutely was like, I was ready to do that. I was ready to put all my love, all my energy, all my everything into making the learning experience exactly what it needed to be so that every single student walked away with something that would make them better for our society. And that's when I really started to lean heavily on the more seasoned teachers that were around me. I leaned heavy on them. I asked them questions all the time. Many of them we're still friends to this day. I asked them questions all this time. I went to their classrooms. I asked if I could go and visit and just kind of sit in and observe and watch and learn. So I was constantly looking for ways to grow myself because I looked at this position as such a huge deal, and I felt like I was behind the curve a little bit because I'm coming in here as a second career teacher. So I've got some work to do. But one teacher, one of my mentor teachers did. She shared with me some research, and it's common research that we all know. But the first time I heard it was from her. Shout out to Sarah. She told me that the research says the number one impactor in the classroom, or the number one impactor to student achievement, is the teacher being in the classroom with that student. And when she said it to me, like I heard it, I was like, yeah, okay. But then as I said and marinated on that, I was like, wait, hold on. So like I am the number one impactor, influencer to my students' academic success. It does not matter what is going on outside of these walls. When they come in here, I can take them on a journey. I can help them get there. I can do it. When I started thinking about it like that, that's when my motivation took a crazy uptick. Every single day, I planned my lessons with that in mind. I looked for engaging activities with that in mind. I looked at my standard. I took deep dives into learning the content and really making sure I understood what I was teaching. I did all of that with that in mind because if the research shows it, there must be some truth to it, right? So that means that I am powerful. I am capable of truly making a difference in my students' lives. And it could get hard. It gets hard sometimes, and political things happen that makes it hard sometimes. But at the end of the day, in these four walls, I can make that difference. So I've always carried that with me. I carried that with me in the classroom. And as I moved into teacher leadership roles, as I moved into administrator roles, and now as I'm in a district leadership position, I continue to carry that with me. And I really do believe that that is a very vital key to supporting with teacher burnout, with teacher retention, with just making sure teachers feel heard, seen, and valued, is that we really have to do a good job at making sure our teachers know that you are capable of making a difference in your student's life. Yeah, the standards are what they are. Yes, the regulations and the policies are what they are, but you are capable of making a difference because you're the adult that is consistent every single day. That student knows that from 10 to 11 o'clock, they're going to be in your classroom and you're going to be there. They know that. There's no wondering about it. And so they can always feel safe that they will get some knowledge from you. And that just might make them more motivated to be ready to receive that knowledge because they know that you're going to be there. So those are things that I'm really, really passionate about. And it's hard sometimes as a school level leader, as a building leader, to stay focused on the instructional part of those motivators that are needed to help teachers. I firsthand, I have allowed an entire almost week go by without even thinking about instruction because I'm dealing with this discipline and dealing with that discipline and then this discipline. And I got to call this parent and I need to talk to this district person about this thing. So it's like it can happen. But one thing I realized is that just like we're intentional about other things in our jobs, we have to be intentional about the instruction. And so I don't think I ever found the perfect way to do it. But I really had to make sure that I was planning time into my day to go into a classroom, turn off my radio, turn off my walkie, and I'm in that classroom and my focus is on this math lesson. My focus is on this English lesson. I'm looking at the science lesson and I'm leaving feedback for my teacher that's not just about this is how you can improve type of feedback, but a glowing piece of feedback. Thank you for that bell ringer. I saw how you nudged Johnny and helped them wake up. I saw that. I saw how the smile that Susie gave to you when you told them good job. Just being able to provide some type of feedback to my teachers. But again, it goes back to me being intentional. So that's part of the research that I'm working on right now. I'm working on my doctorate with National University, and part of my research area is focused on the instructional leadership practices that are necessary, that absolutely have to happen in order for us to see positive self-efficacy with teachers. What do we absolutely have to do as instructional leaders to ensure that our teachers believe in themselves so then they can transfer that high belief to their students?
I love that. And I love the vulnerability that you shared. And as a former principal myself, I can completely relate. There was days where you'd have, from 8 to 12 in classrooms and you get to your office and bam, something hits and
Yeah.
that's not happening today. Right.
Yeah.
And I think we need to give ourselves some grace in those moments, but your ability to be able to focus on the instructional side has absolutely been huge. When I also think about the ability to foster relationships and foster trusts, when you're going into classrooms, it can be a really interesting, tricky at times piece, just because of different relationships with folks. Some folks that maybe you know them well, there's trust established, maybe somebody's new, maybe they're a brand new teacher. There's so many different variables here. And as we hit the summer months and start to look to next year, be curious as to your advice about navigating some of those conversations, building some of those relationships, maybe navigating navigating conversations where the person isn't really looking for you to come in. They've perfected it all and they don't really need your help, right? And that can be a challenge for sure. And so
Yeah.
maybe it's advice to new principals because they find themselves in that role. Maybe it's addressing a newer teacher that just feels like they've got it all perfected, or maybe it's just navigating a challenging conversation there as well. So as you're getting
Mhm.
into classrooms for admin and similar roles that maybe aren't so skilled in that, what advice do you have in that area?
Oh, that's gold. I would say first thing, I have to think about my belief system about who I am as a leader. And I have to, the same thing, the same way that teachers should believe, we want teachers to believe that they are going to be able to make an impact in their students' life. As a leader, I have to carry the belief that I can make a positive impact with my teachers. So I carry that with me, which means I have to operate from a place of assuming best intent. I have to operate from that place. There's no way I can be an effective leader and begin to build positive relationships if I have this underlying idea in the back of my head about whatever this teacher or this adult in the building may or may not be doing, their motive, or why are they doing this, or what are they really trying to do, or what are they really trying to say. I can't live in that type of world. I don't know how people do it. That's really stressful. That's really heavy to carry that around, to wonder if there's a hidden agenda with adults that are in your building who you have placed in a position to be directly in front of the students, right? So I operate from a place of best intent. And I try to encourage others around me. I practice it every day, and it does take work. But in operating from that place of best intent, then that allows me to see other opportunities to build relationships in ways that will create the space for hard conversations. So, for example, if I'm walking down the hallway and I happen to see a teacher that's outside of their classroom, I'm operating in the best intent. And I'm going to first talk to them, just ask them how they're doing. What are you up to? How's the day going? How are the kids going? And then I might say, well, what's going on in your classroom? Like, what's going on today? Why are you outside the classroom? Why aren't you in the classroom? It's like, what's going on? But operating from the place of best intent and not assuming that there's something wrong, right? That there's got to be something wrong. Hallway conversations are probably the best opportunity to build authentic relationships with adults in the building. And this doesn't just go for teachers, this goes for any adult in the building. Just stopping in the hallway and saying hello. And talking about how the day is going so far, and just having a casual dialogue, right? You can never underestimate the power that those conversations have on not just that interpersonal relationship, but also on the whole culture of the building. But again, it goes back to operating from best intent, like really assuming that the adults that we have in the building, that they woke up because and are here today because they want to make a difference in a student's life. That is it. They woke up and they're here because of that. There are many other reasons that could follow that, but they don't have to be here. They could be anywhere, but they are choosing to come back to this building every day. So we have to assume positive things about them. And that can help frame conversations. Hey, Mr. J, I know you want to be here in this building because you come every day. I know you want to be here. Let's talk about ways to make this environment feel good for you. What can I do as your leader to support your growth, to support your social emotional well-being, to support you with making sure you have time for your family when you get home? Just having those real authentic conversations, and the hard conversations, it comes from assuming best intent first and foremost.
Yeah, I love that, and you're reminding me of this. I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's motivated something where it's really a science principle that looks at. I probably have the right person on the other end here. It's this cognition principle that really is that you get what you look for, right? So if I'm looking
Mhm.
for positives, I'm going to see more positives. If I'm looking for negatives, I'm going to see more negatives. And so I love
Mhm.
that, assuming that first intent, but also
Mhm.
making sure we're looking for the good and not just the gotcha, but more of
Yeah.
a hey, we got you. right? And I think that
Yeah.
mindset piece that you're on there is so vital. So much of what you've brought out already really is around empathetic leadership, and I know that's something that you value tremendously.
Mhm.
Maybe we get a lot of turnover over these coming months. A lot of people assuming new jobs like you did last year, moving into a new leadership role, a new building over the district, whatever it might be. What advice do you have for leaders as they maybe take on some new roles, or if they need to change the culture inside, or whatever that might be, about being that empathetic leader that people need? What does that look like?
Mm. I would say that to be an empathetic leader, it really takes some internal like let's look inside. Like let me look inside of who I am. Let me see if I can understand me first. It definitely takes a lot of reflection. It takes a willingness to want to be coached. I believe every leader should have a coach. There is never a point where we've arrived ever, right? Because we're working with people and people are not just, stagnant the same way every single day for every single year, every generation. We are always changing. And that's the beautiful thing about our world and who we are. We will always change. So in order to really begin to embrace what it means to be an empathetic leader, that means that we have to do that internal work and turn inwards and see, what do I value? What is it that I value about just in life in general? Do I value community, faith, love? Do I value spirituality? Do I value empathy? Do I even value that? Do I value relationships? Like where are our values, right? And then when we think about what our values are individually, like within ourselves, then we can start connecting our values to the work that we do every day. So I value community. How does that show up in the work that I do every day? And from there, then we can move into the space of, now, how can I use that to connect with other people? That's the empathy piece. One thing that I love about empathy is that it can be taught. That's something that was surprising to me when I first started kind of taking my dive into what it means to be an empathetic leader. Is that empathy is not doesn't it's not something that you're just born with. It is something that you are taught. So if someone does not have that skill of empathy, it is simply because they just have not been exposed to situations where they have had to be empathetic, and that includes leaders. Like there's no like we can't just weed people out. Like anyone is subject to lacking a little bit of empathy every now and then. It truly is something that we have to practice. We have to work at it. We have to think about it. After so long, yeah, it can become second nature. But in leadership, it is necessary in order to support a positive organizational culture and a positive school culture. Without an empathetic leader, it's just management. It's just management. It's just management. And people don't want to be managed. Like that's the thing. Like we don't want to be managed at the heart of hearts, especially not in education. No one likes to just be managed in education. We like the fact that we can go into our classrooms and create a whole world for our students. We love that. We love being able to walk into a school building and see a bulletin board, and we can create something and create programs and new pathways and celebrations. We are an innovative people. Educators are an innovative people. That means we don't want to be managed, but we do want to be led and coached. So, in order to really understand being an empathetic leader, it takes internal work, and it takes the vulnerability of having a partner and a coach that you can kind of bounce things off of, and thinking about, how can I grow? How can I support my staff? How do I support myself? How do I stop this? If there's harmful behavior that I'm doing, how do I change this behavior? And who's going to tell me if I am being harmful? Who do I have that's holding me accountable? All of that factors into being an empathetic leader.
Yeah, I love that. I love your view on that. And it really connects to the kind of one of the last questions I want to ask you, and that's around SEL, whether it's adult SEL or student SEL. It's, I know, something we've connected with on the past, something you value tremendously, and would love for you to give some insight into, I personally, I've written about and talked about the hidden stories within, the stories on people's hearts that when they show up, other people don't know, but they're there. And we can't be naive and pretend that everybody as humans can just drop them at the door and come perfectly ready to learn or perfectly ready to teach, because we're human beings. doesn't work like that, right? So
Yeah.
give us, if you would, just some insight into that, either adult SEL and or student SEL, any resources that you have, and just things.
Mhm.
I know it's an area that you spend so much time with.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in SEL, and I love it. I really do. It has helped me be a better parent, a uh, better wife. It's helped me just be a better person, because, like I just mentioned about, who's going to hold you accountable as a leader if you're being harmful. Understanding social emotional learning, that's another thing that kind of keeps me accountable for how I'm showing up. Who do I show up as, and what energy am I inviting into the environment, and what am I doing with the atmosphere when I walk into a room? I have seen lots of great resources. I'd have to say that right now my favorite SEL resource is with Harmony. The Harmony curriculum is amazing, and it's free, which is even better. But then also the Harmony professional learning, the on-demand professional learning side of things is great too. I've done some of the modules that are in the online portal for that system, and I think I said it's free. If I didn't, it's free. But I've done some of those modules in the system, and they really are great. Like, it really does help me to step back and think about, when that student got upset, what did I do that contributed to that? And that's that social awareness piece of social emotional learning. And notice I'm talking about me, so there's adults can truly work in social emotional well-being. This is not something we grew up talking about. We didn't grow up hearing this word, although it's been around for a very long time. This was not just part of our normal vocabulary to talk about our social emotional well-being. But we've all grown up and have been in situations as adults, as kids, now that we're adults, where if we look back on it, it's like, yeah, that was one of those moments where my friend just did not have great conflict resolution skills, and I ended up in that argument along with them. Like, we can look back on those things, and like, those are the exact skills that we're trying to help our students to gain. But that doesn't mean that we're exempt. Like, we still have work to do as adults. I tell people all the time that, we're expecting our students to act and behave a certain way, but are we showing up in the appropriate ways, social, emotionally? When we get upset, do we blow up? When we get upset, do we yell? And not that it's anything wrong with yelling, but it's just like, the same things that we see our students do, we're doing it too. And I heard someone recently say, I love it. I probably won't say it as beautifully as they did, but it was something that they said that was, the only difference between kids and adults is that adults have had several chances to mess up and do it again. Like, kids just haven't had that many opportunities yet to mess up and do it again. And so that's what I really love about social emotional learning, because again, it's that accountability piece, and it allows us to be intentional about how we're showing up in our spaces. So there's the social awareness piece. There's the responsible decision making. I love that when I'm talking to my own children about making decisions, and like, you have a choice. You always have a choice. You will always have a choice. But how are you going to be able to discern between the one that's the responsible choice and the one that's not? So being able to have those dialogues, that's what social emotional learning brings in. And I've been really excited I guess about the last year or so. I've been, through my consulting life, I've been supporting community-based organizations here in my city, youth serving organizations, with really thinking about how they can better align their services and the things that they offer their youth, so that it truly is making a mark on their youth's social emotional well-being. So we've done some needs assessments. They've given some surveys to their youth, and what we've seen is what we already knew, but seeing it on paper in the numbers is something different. What we have seen is that our youth are really struggling with things such as communication skills, with things like emotional regulation. There, in one part of the survey, about 77% of the youth responded for this one particular organization, that they have a hard time. 77% said that they have a hard time pulling themselves out of a low moment. So if something happens and it brings their mood down, it's hard for them to pull themselves back out. I think about that for the kids, but It's the same way for adults. We experience low moments, and we need the ability to be able to pull ourselves up out of that low moment. And so, just thinking about how social emotional learning shows up for our kids, there's definitely a place for us as adults where we can be walking alongside them on the journey. And that's what I really love about the free resources that are available, because especially with Harmony, those resources, it provides support for you and your students, but then just for you. How are you attending to your own social emotional well-being?
Yeah, you were talking about choices just a few moments ago, and I will
Yeah.
double down on your choice with Harmony as well, and encourage our listeners to check out harmonysel.org or harmony-academy.org. What an incredible resource. People love free, and people
Hmm.
love even more when it's free and amazing at the same
Hmm.
time. And man,
Hmm.
do they have some of the best resources out there for SEL. So thanks for giving that a shout. Totally
Of
agree.
course.
So I have one more question for you to wrap up
Okay.
here. Question I love to ask all of our guests at the end is, what's something on your heart, on your mind as we go into the summer months, looking to next year, or a piece of advice that you have for school and district leaders just moving forward with all that's on our plates, all that they have going on in our world? What's a piece of advice you have for
Mm. Ah, I'm gonna share the advice that I'm also going to do personally, which is truly take a break. Truly take a break. Think about how to give yourself rewards throughout. Go ahead and start planning that for next school year. So you should not go 9.5 weeks before you give yourself a break. How can you put breaks in more often so that you do not reach the point of burnout? That is something that I am trying to be intentional about, because as much as we love this work as leaders, as education leaders, working with youth, working with kids, working with students and young adults, and shaping the future of the world, as much as we love it and it is so rewarding, it can also be very, very heavy. It can be very, very heavy. I have lost students. I have watched my students experience loss, and I've watched them heal from tragic events. And sometimes I have carried that with me, and then before I know it, I'm exhausted. I'm barely able to get out of the bed. My head is hurting, and I feel awful, and I have a cold, and I can't figure out what's wrong with me. And it's because I've carried around this stress for so long, because I love and care about my students so much. So something that I have been very intentional about, and I feel like I'm doing better with it. I got to pat myself in the back. I think I'm doing better with it. But that's my advice, is to find those moments to truly take a break and truly rest. Don't feel bad about taking that break. You're not going to let anybody down. You're not going to let anybody down for stepping back for a minute and taking some time to prioritize you, because we need you. We cannot do this work without you. So we want you to be healthy and well, social, emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever wellness looks like for you. Find that moment to work in the opportunities to attend to those things, so that you can come back and we can keep going, and we can do this together, and we can watch our students go to college and join the military, and get amazing credentials and open businesses. We want to be around to see that, right? So we really need to prioritize our self-care. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. And I hope it's timely, since we're knocking on summer months of taking a break here. So yeah.
I think it's perfect. And I don't think there's any better way to end than focusing on self care and who we are and being able to recharge and rest coming up these summer months. My friend, what an honor it's been to be able to reconnect with you. And that's Melody Hawkins, everyone. Melody, one final piece. How can people connect if they want to reach out and bring in?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram, at mhawkinsedu. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Melody M. Hawkins. I am also on Facebook as Melody M. Hawkins. But you can also visit my website, which is Vision Led, LED, visionledllc.org. When I'm not in schools and running around the building talking about science instruction, I am supporting community-based organizations with program implementation, evaluation, thinking about how to incorporate social emotional well-being and wellness into their organizational cultures. So I would love to connect with you. Please reach out. I am here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You are amazing, and we appreciate having you.
Thank you, Tom.